Welcome back, Mets fans, to another week of Raise the Apple. I did not think for 2 consecutive weeks that we would be doing a Mets therapy session, but the Mets continue to struggle. They continue to just have everything that could go wrong. And I guess we'll try and talk about it a little bit. I mean, I know there's only so much you could say about what has gone on, but I want to start on a positive note, and let's start with this.
Right center field, headed back toward the wall. It's out of here! Out of here! Pete Alonso stands alone. The polar bear on his own private iceberg. Pete Alonso, the most prolific home run hitter in New York Mets history.
That's right, our guy Pete Alonso finally takes down Darryl Strawberry's record of 252, hit his 253rd career home run earlier this week, and then followed that night up with number 254. And to me, that was an awesome moment in Mets history. I know there are going to be people that discredit it, and we'll talk about that in just a couple minutes. But when you look at this franchise, and not all the history is good history with the Mets, and I think most Mets fans can acknowledge and accept that. But when stuff is good, Mets fans, I think, do a very good job of appreciating what they have, if that makes sense. Like Jacob deGrom. We haven't had a pitcher like Jacob deGrom since Tom Seaver and Doc that was that dominant for an extended period of time like that. And part of me feels like we may have taken Jake at least a little bit for granted. But for the most part, like, we had Jake's back from day one. Most Mets fans have had Pete's back since day one. I know there's a lot of questions over the offseason, what he was going to do. And then this offseason, I can almost guarantee he's going to opt out. That moment was such a special moment in Mets history. For me, it feels like I've kind of watched Pete grow up as a Met, and it feels weird saying this at my age, but I feel like I've watched Pete grow up as a Met. I remember his first career home run. I remember when he broke the Mets single season record. I remember when he broke the rookie record, the Major League Baseball rookie record, and the Mets record. I remember when he was the first Met to break 50 in a season. I remember 252 when he tied it in Milwaukee, and then him breaking it a few days later. Moments like this don't happen all too often in the Mets world. And when stuff like this happens, it should be celebrated. And not for the haters and the Chris Russos of the world that try to discredit it. If you didn't, this really bothered me. And it really shouldn't have, but Chris Russo's comments about the home run and Gary Cohen's call basically was dogging on Gary Cohen's call because of how the Mets have been playing of late, where they are in the standings, and then just dogging on from Pete on the home run record in general because 252 wasn't that impressive, I guess, to him. The record is what the record is. It's another example of why ESPN absolutely sucks at covering Major League Baseball. Is because they don't have people on their personnel that know anything about baseball. Do you know how difficult it is to hit 252 home runs in your Major League career? You know how difficult it is for 300, 400, 500, 600, 700 career home runs? You know how difficult that is? I don't know. That I did not. So part of Chris Russo's argument was talking about, he brought up Jeter and Ruth. Jeter only hit about 260 career home runs. Babe Ruth was dead for about 15 years before the Mets even became a thing. You're not comparing the same thing. The Yankees have been around for basically forever in the baseball world. The Mets have been around since the 60s. That's a big difference. And again, as we touched on a little bit ago, not all of Mets history is good history. We don't have a lustrous history of notable major leaguers like the Yankees do, like the Dodgers do, like the Cardinals or the Red Sox do. There's only two guys wearing a Mets hat in Cooperstown, and Tom Seaver and Mike Piazza. And unless a miracle happens that David Wright can get in with the Veterans Committee, or if he somehow ends up at that 75% threshold, the Mets are not getting another Met cap wearing plaque in the Hall of Fame until the current guys retire. Pete, Lindor, Soto, Nimmo. I'm not saying those guys are guaranteed Hall of Famers. I'm just saying that as an example. Unless David Wright gets in, we're not going to see a Met in the Hall of Fame until these guys. We have only made the playoffs in back-to-back years as an organization, as a Mets fans have experienced back-to-back postseason years twice. 99 and 2000, and then 2015 and 16. And then if they make the playoffs assuming they make the playoffs this year, 24-25. It'll be 3 times since 1962 that the Mets have made the postseason in back-to-back years. Now, with Steve Cohen in charge, since he's taken over, obviously make the playoffs this year. That's 3 of the last 4 years. Spending money, have the biggest contract in the history of professional sports. They're starting to look like a competent team. Things are going up for the Mets from an organizational standpoint. The history we've had short bursts. We're not like the Yankees, where you can't even wear a single-digit number anymore because of how many guys they've retired. You know, when we retire people, it's a big deal. There's a reason there's so few. It shouldn't be handed out the way some organizations do. The Mets don't have the best history compared to most teams, and that's okay. Mets fans have acknowledged that. That's why we love them. They're the lovable losers of baseball history. But things are going good. Well, not at this very moment, but generally speaking, things are going very good for the Mets right now. As an organization, they are trending upward as to what they should be as a New York sports market team. So when we have a guy who's been a lifelong Met to this point, breaking our franchise's home run record, that is a big deal that we should celebrate. So what? It's not 600 or anything like that. Assuming Pete stays a Met, which he should, that'll be an off-season conversation on this podcast. He's very well a 500 career home run hitter. Very easily a career 500 home run hitter. And then Chris Russo later was like, if Mets love him so much, why didn't they give him a contract last year? Because Pete had a bad year last year. You don't know how that was going to be. Pete had a down year by his standards, and you go give him all that money, and then he falls flat on his face. This year he's been great. This year he's deserved that payday that he's got coming to him. I don't think the Mets are going to let him go. Contrary to what some people think. I think Pete's going to be a Met for life, and that home run record is going to continue to go up and up and up and up. But I don't get where this slander came. Like, look at the Padres record. Manny Machado set the Padres franchise record at about 160-something home runs in end of the year last year. Can any baseball fan, besides probably Padres fans, and even maybe not even all of Padres fans, can you tell me who had the Padres home run record before Manny Machado broke it? Not every organization has the history of having these superstars that, like we said, the Yankees, the Cardinals, the Dodgers, the Red Sox. Not every team has that. And when they do have those guys that come through and they do something special like this, it's a big deal and should be celebrated. And Pete is our guy. Pete's been our guy since 2019. He's been our lovable, can't run to save his life polar bear. I mean, Pete needs to be a Met for life. And Mets fans have embraced him. Nimmo was made a Met for life. And I'm saying this in terms of homegrown guys. I don't count Soto and Lindor in this. Nimmo's been made a Met for life. Pete should be right there next to him. And anyone who tries to discredit his home run milestone simply because the Mets' home run record is not that impressive, to me, simply doesn't know what they're talking about when it comes to the New York Mets organization. And again, I could go on a hours-long thing about the history of the Mets, but we'll save more Pete talk for the offseason. Let's talk about the way the rest of this Mets team has gone. Mets lost 2 out of 3 against the Braves. They have lost 13 of the last 15 overall. And I was talking to someone at the gym today. It's not that they're losing. It's the way in which they're losing. That is what's making this so frustrating and so depressing and so awful to watch. Milwaukee up 5-0 late. They jumped out to a 6-0 lead against the Braves, lost it in the 4th inning. They had back-to-back days where the starters didn't even make it out of the 4th inning. When the offense is doing good, the pitching sucks. When the pitching is doing good, the offense is non-existent. And the bullpen, frankly, is just overworked. They have been working on overtime basically all year long. And I don't. That's why I don't really put too much blame on the bullpen and the way the bullpen's performed, because they've been overworked since the start of the year. Reed Garrett, I know he's struggled of late. He has, I think, an ERA of about 5.5 since June. He's been, or over his last few outings, he's been overworked. He's been a workhorse, and he's been awesome for about 90% of this season. He's been awesome. So I'm going to cut Reed Garrett a little bit of slack. Edwin Diaz just allowed his, first or second run since April, when the Brewers hit that walk-off home run, and the Brewers, who are the hottest team in baseball right now, have won 12 in a row, are 30-some games over 500. I mean, I know we're beating a dead horse and saying it's the ebbs and flows of a baseball season, and the Mets are really good at being inconsistent, this 2025 team. Because you look at the talent on this roster, this is, and I said it last week, this is a World Series caliber lineup in my opinion, and they are too good to be in the position they're in. Now you're thinking, well, they're still, 8 games over 500 or whatever it is. They're still in a playoff race. If the Mets lose tonight against the Mariners, and if the Reds win, the Mets are out of the playoffs. The Reds are only a half game back. Now you can look at it one of two ways. You can look at it as the realistic, probably, fan, where, hey, we had the best record in June, and 2 months later, we are half game up on the last playoff spot. Or you can try and look at it a little more positive, I guess, spin it in a positive direction, and that we got about a month and change left in the season. We're playing meaningful games in August. We're playing meaningful games in September. At the end of the day, you just have to get in. Do I care if the Mets win the division or a wild card? Yes. But generally speaking, no. As long as they're in, as we saw last year, as long as they're in, anything can happen after that. Baseball is a wild sport, and that's why we love it so much, because anything can happen. Look at the Cubs have kind of fallen on their face a little bit along with the Mets as the Brewers have gotten hot. The Dodgers are now in second place. When you look at the standings, seeing the Dodgers not in first in the NL West is really weird to look at. The Yankees have been free-falling for a while. I would argue worse than the Mets have. The Astros, we talked about last week, came out of the gate very slow but have come back to form. The Tigers have slowed down a little bit. I think the Tigers are still going to hang on in the Central, but they've slowed down from the start of the season. It's very hard to sustain such a pace throughout the entire year. And yes, we knew this team was a little bit flawed coming into the year. We knew we were going to have a good offense. We knew that the Mets were going to have a okay pitching staff. They all pit a potential good pitching staff if they all pitched their potential, and a decent bullpen. And you can't, and it's frankly, the problems have been because guys are underperforming. It's not about the talent on the team. A lot of Mets fans complaining, well, David Stearns didn't go get a starting pitcher at the trade deadline. Who did you want him to get? The only big-name starter that was moved was Merrill Kelly. Sandy wasn't moved. Edward Cabrera didn't move. Sonny Gray didn't move. Zach Gallen didn't move. The only big-name starter that moved was Merrill Kelly. And frankly, considering the Mets have just brought up Jonathan, Carson Bench, Jet Williams, and Ryan Clifford to AAA, they're bringing up Nolan McLean to make his Major League debut tomorrow. Sproat is probably going to be shortly behind him. When they have those guys that are right there, I wouldn't probably trade them away either. It's easy to sit there and say the Mets should have gotten a start. I've said it at the trade deadline recap. Would I have loved the Mets to have gotten Zach Gallen? Absolutely. Or Sandy? Absolutely. But at the same time, they addressed what they needed to. They got a center field bat. I know Mullins got off to a slow start, but he's been better of late since coming to the Mets. And they added reinforcements in the bullpen. Now, Rogers has been good. Soto's been good. Helsley, not been so good since coming over. But they addressed what they needed to. And on paper, when this rotation is Senga, Manaea, Peterson, and Holmes, I'm not even going to count Frankie Montas, who got moved to the bullpen. Nolan McLean's going to take his spot. So I'm not even going to count a fifth starter spot. But those four, that's a serviceable rotation. If they perform to the way we've seen them perform and know the way they can perform. Senga has struggled his past couple starts. He was better last night, but he has struggled. Sean Manaea is like a Cy Young pitcher through 4 innings and then has just collapsed since coming back. David Peterson's been great all year, was not good his last time out, but, he's been good pretty much the entire year. He's due for a bad start, so I don't read too much into that. Clay Holmes, I think, frankly, is just running out of gas. He's never pitched this many innings ever in his career. And if he's running out of gas, he's running out of gas. I mean, you paying him starter money, you're going to keep him in the rotation. And for the most part, I know he's come back down to earth a little bit, but he was pretty solid for the first chunk of the season. He was only going 5 innings, but he was allowing 3 runs every single time. 5 innings, 3 runs. 5 innings, 3 runs. But you know what? He keeps you in the ballgame. He keeps you in the ballgame. And when you have a top 4 of your lineup that looks like Lindor, Soto, Pete, and Nimmo, that should be enough. But it's not, because the Mets have been so inconsistent. They're very good at being inconsistent. Another complaint from Mets fans is I don't know where firing Mendoza came into it. There is nothing Mendoza can do. When guys underperform, what do you want him to do? At some point, this is the one thing I hate about sports, is that coaches and managers become the scapegoats. And sometimes it's justified because they're bad at their job. But at the same time, some of the blame has to fall on the players. Between Lindor, the Fab Four, as Steve Cohen's called them, you are paying them a combined over $1 billion for the duration of their contracts. They should be performing like that. And they've had moments where they have been. Nimmo is kind of coming around a little bit after an awful slump. Pete has been starting to pick it up a lot lately. Lindor has picked it up lately. Soto has been up and down the whole year. When you pay that much money and you have those 4 guys that are that talented, you expect them to lead the way. And I don't think any of that blame, guys underperforming, should be put on Mendoza. And a lot of people are complaining, and another complaint with Mendoza is there's not enough fire in him. Why isn't he getting angry in his press conferences? Well, he's not going to throw guys under the bus. A good manager doesn't throw his players or coachings under the bus. Look at Dave Martinez and what that got him. Throwing the players under the bus. It got him fired. That's not how Mendoza rolls. And yes, would it be nice if, Mendoza had a little more grr, like everyone keeps posting the Terry Collins rant from a few years ago? Yeah, it would be nice to see something like that from Mendoza. But at the same time, A good manager is not going to throw his players under, going to just say, yeah, it's on them. I've done my job. He's going to have his guys back, and he's held them accountable. He's been public at saying, like, yeah, this guy didn't do this guy didn't do that. Like, they know. I don't know. I just wish that things were going better right now for the Mets. It's been very difficult to watch for a long time. And again, you can look at it in a negative way that they've been playing so awful of late, or you could also look at it as, hey, we're playing meaningful games in August and September. To me, that's how I look at it. Because that's how you got to look at it. It's a 162-game season. We're watching almost every single night. Plus, we're going to be watching another dozen or so games, dozen-plus games in the postseason. Part of being a sports fan is you ride the highs and you ride the lows. And the Mets are at a very bad low right now. And I just hope that, I mean, we said it last week, they need that moment, and they can't get that moment. Nothing is going their way right now. And I just hope that in time, very quickly, but because the Phillies have been scuffling a little bit of late, this would be a great opportunity to pick up some ground on the Phillies. But you got Seattle coming in this weekend, who's been playing very well, and they have their three best pitchers in Luis Castillo, Bryan Woo, and George Kirby slated to start these three games. Not George Kirby, Logan Gilbert. My bad. You have they have their three studs lined up for this weekend. And there's the Mets September schedule. Let me just pull it out quick. The Mets schedule does not get easy in September. So after the Mariners series, the Mets round out August at Washington, at Atlanta, and then home against the Phillies and Marlins. Then September, on the road at Detroit, Cincinnati, Philly, home against Texas, and San Diego, and Washington for the last homestand of the year, and then finish the year on the road at the Cubs and at Miami. That's not a gauntlet, but it's not an easy. There's some very good teams in there. And we know Atlanta's going to be annoying. We know Miami's going to be annoying just because that's the way they are. But when you got the Cubs in there, the Padres, the Reds, the Phillies, the Tigers, the Mariners this weekend, it's going to be a tough month of September. So the Mets just need to figure it out fast before things get really bad. I know Frank the Tank's already being Frank the Tank, but you gotta look at it. You gotta look at the bigger picture in the grand scheme of things with this team. But that, again, we could go on forever on this. We ranted about it last week. They keep continuing to rip our hearts out, and we just got to keep pushing along and hope things get better as the season quickly comes to an end. But that's going to wrap it up for this week on Raise the Apple. Make sure you like and subscribe on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe on Apple Podcasts. Make sure you follow and like on TikTok. Almost at 10,000 likes on TikTok. Hopefully we can reach there before the end of the baseball season, so make sure you stay close to that. Thank you for tuning in this week. We will see you next week. Hopefully the Mets can keep it rolling, get it rolling as Seattle comes into town this weekend. Thank you for tuning in. Make sure you subscribe. Let's go Mets.